G'day everyone, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this episode is a video tutorial on drawing noses. Getting right into it, we have our example here that we've used in a couple of other tutorials of ranges of styles from super cartoony to a lot more detailed. So when drawing noses, in the super cartoony spectrum of the chart is where it's pretty simple and much more adventurous. We can do shapes like this, we can do shapes like this, we can do shapes like this. We can do shapes like this. It's much more simple and you don't need to know necessarily detail in how you would structure. It's more about a shape that would fit a character or a style. Next, we're getting a little bit more realistic. So we're starting to need to use generic shapes. So we don't need to necessarily know too much detail about how a nose might look. In fact, you could mix in much more cartoony sort of shapes there without, getting too much into the structure. So we can move along from there pretty quick as well, but you just can't be as adventurous as there. I mean, I suppose you can. It's just, yeah, it works, but I think in general, for consistency, it would make sense to err on the side of simplicity. Over here, we're starting to get a little bit more detailed and we're starting to need to know how to structure a nose. And we're going to get into the basic ways that I know to use, that I personally use to figure out structure. So I'm going to do so without any construction lines at the moment, but just to give an example as to what the nose looks like. And then next over here, we're getting much more detailed and showing a lot more shape and construction in the nose itself. So there are very basic sort of examples. And moving along from there, I want to go through these one by one. So let's get some labels happening. We have cartoony. Whoops. Then we have comic. And then we have real-ish. I tend to be not that great at life drawing or, very realistic, but I do want to approach these one by one. So cartoony noses are as simple as you can imagine. Truly, you're talking about shapes as diverse from big round, Sesame Street kind of noses to kind of just, it's very much about, shapes. Just pretend those sides are nostrils there. In fact, I'm just going to draw a whole bunch of shapes and show you how I might structure a nose around that. Let's see, much more pointy. Let's go really wide, and let's go a fairly, standard shape. So using these shapes, one by one, if these were our construction lines, this is how I might approach drawing a nose out of these shapes. I might make a quick basic sort of eye position, just so you can see how it might look in some form of context, rather than just leaving it completely blank. Here we go. Alright. So, giving this one shape, it's as simple as it might look. Now, in deciding what is lined and what hasn't got line work, generally when you're just drawing basic shapes, the side that is connected to the skin and is facing away from the angle that the face is heading to. So for instance, this head might be facing this direction. I can leave this without a line, just to show that the skin here is connected to the face. I mean, to be honest, you could just do a big circle, but, you know, it's a little more connected to draw something like that. The eyes would be back here, though. So, whoops. With this kind of shape, go simple. You could draw the nostrils on the sides there. This one you kind of like would wrap everything around like that. Nice big bulky nose shape. These are really, really simple sort of approaches to drawing very cartoony noses. This one might have a bit more of a, you know, bit more of a bone, nose bone line thing going on there. This one's a little more pointy. We really don't need to go into too much detail. This could be an upturned one, actually. Oops. Like that. Show the nostrils underneath. And really don't like how that one turned out. Let's try this. That'll do. Look, we really don't need to go into much more detail than that, but you get the idea. Cartoony, super simple, super quick. It's more about the shape itself. So now comic is where we'd get much more into how a nose is structured. How I approach the structure of drawing a comic style nose is I pretend that we have a flat strip like this. Now that strip can change in shape. I think drawing on a context will make more sense. So I'm going to draw a face without a nose. Okay. Here's my noseless face. Now, where the eyebrows begin, right here and here, these pivots, that is where the nose turns from the brow into the top ridge of the nose. So if we were to draw every line, that would turn into that strip, that flat strip that I was talking about, right up until it gets to the tip of the nose. So that end of the flat strip is where the tip of the nose would be. Now you add two circles behind that strip, which are pushing it forward where the nostrils will be shaped. So drawing line work on top of this, I would be drawing the outside shape like this and having the nose curve under. The nostril goes under there and the skin wraps around the nostril like that. And we could add a little line on the edge there just to show that that is the other edge of the nose. Okay, so that is a basic example as to how I might structure the nose in a more comic style character, as you can see there. So drawing it on different angles, so I'll leave this guy on the side here, and I'm going to get my construction line. I'm going to start off with a profile view, so the top of the eyebrow goes out into the nose shape, we add the circle for the nostril, and that goes into the lip shape. Now, I don't like the angle of that. I'll pull that in. Next, so that's our side. For a front-on view, three-quarter view, we have that there. So we've already got our example there. And for a front-on view, I'm going to just give that a context in a moment. We'll get to that later. This is what we're going to have to work with. So I'm going to move into my side view here. And same thing, we pretend that we have, this is where the eyes would be. So the top of that strip kind of comes down into here and ends there. And it curves down into where the lip goes out. Our nostril is separate, goes around and wraps slightly around where that ball is. And if we want, we can add a line very faint line there just to indicate that it's a solid shape, that it's a bridge of a solid nose. In fact, I might just leave that there. Always remember that the nose is very connected to the brows, to the eyebrows, or the ridge of the brows. And you can use that to your advantage. If you look at characters like Mr. Incredible from The Incredibles, his eyebrow, his brow, forehead, really works into his nose. It's actually really well designed. So if you look at that, that's a really good example. Now, on this view, same thing, where the eyebrows kind of come in, as if they were like that. They start to slant in to the ridge of the nose like this. The circles of the nose, if I drew them in the construction, which I should have, kind of go in like that. I think they're a bit big, so I probably should have drawn my construction lines, but oh well. So there you go, that's how I might draw that for a comic character. So really simply just kind of having that band for a nose, and we can bend that band. So if I take these examples and kind of shrink them and put them over here, I'll give you 3 examples on the right as to how that band can be bent or used. So let's all 3/4 views. Let's take this character, over here, and bring him over here, and get rid of that band, and we'll make a few different examples. So I've got number 1, number 2, and transform, flip horizontal, number 3. So if I was to show you how I'd go about this, in terms of using the band and bending the shape, in this example, I'm going to take that band, I'm going to thicken it halfway through the head, and then thin it again into the tip, and draw those nostrils behind those shapes. In this example down here, I'm going to curve it as an object, like that, before I draw those nostrils behind there. And in this example, I'm going to taper it out and slightly curve it out and draw our nostril. So when drawing the line work over these, you'll see very quickly how changing that shape very much adds and changes the style of the character that we've drawn. So this is a much more broad-nosed character. Over here we've got a really thick, curved or hooked nose. And down here we've got a much more sharp nose structure. And zooming out, you can see, just looking at these 3 examples, that they're very, very different styles or shapes. It's quite simple to draw the nose when you think about it, in just kind of that band with the 2 nostrils pushing it out. Finally, we're getting into the real-ish style nose. Now, rather than get too crazy with this, I'm going to do my basic 3 view of the nose in our different perspectives. So we have our side profile. Oops, how am I going to do this? All right, we have our side, 3/4, front. And let's imagine for the side where the nose is going to go there, and it goes into the mouth here. For the 3/4, we have the side of the face, so the nose is going to go in there with the mouth shape here. And for the front, you're fairly standard. Okay, so taking it bit by bit, I want to show you the construction lines that I use for these views. Now, when drawing a more realistic shape for the nose, I think of it more as a block. I want to start on the 3/4 angle actually, because that'll be a better example as to what I mean. So if we imagine a building block, which has a few different parts. Okay, we have our basic side, which is here, and then our front is divided into two. We have the ridge that begins where the brows come in, and then we have the second part. This is a bit of a hinge here. I know I'm probably talking a bit confusingly, but I'll give an example. So this is the eye, this is the other eye, really badly positioned on the face. It's awful. Okay, so our eyebrows come in like this, and we draw our basic building block for the nose, which starts here, pushes against the flat of the face, and we have it like that. So it's kind of like that band, but we're making it a solid block now, and the nostrils protrude from that. Okay, so that is how I approach the very beginning, and that makes it easier to view from each angle. So for example, doing it from the side, same sort of thing. We just imagine that building block with the nostril. Now, another thing to keep in mind is if we're getting in a little bit more detail, the front here juts out slightly. So the same here with the front. I don't want this to be too uneven, but it's not looking very even at the moment. Okay, so if this was our building block, this was our middle part of the building block, and nostrils came out there, and the front juts out. So I'm going to get in to do the line work now, and really zoom in. So for the side, we have the bridge of the nose, and we wrap the skin around our shapes. And our nostril wraps around itself, and then the top goes into the lips. I actually think the tip of the nose can jut out more than I've let it. Like that. Go over here. And we kind of keep a basic shape here, but we don't want it to show too much. Now this is just kind of one style of nose for a more realistic-ish approach to drawing a nose, and because there are so many shapes, not to mention I haven't talked about female noses yet, there's a little more to cover. So the front kind of widens out in the middle a little bit, comes in, pokes out at the front, oops, out at the front, juts out, and those nostrils curve in. Okay, so zooming out, we get a rough example as to that. Now moving on from that rough example, I want to accentuate on this building block idea for the nose that we've used here. Okay, there are different ways that you can use that building block. For example, I'm going to draw you a bunch of different building blocks, all on 3/4 view. I'm going to have a building block like the other ones that we've done, with the front jutting out and the nostrils, like that. I'm going to draw one with a much shorter top part to the front and a longer bottom part, like that. I'm going to draw one the other way around, so with a much longer top part, shorter bottom part, jutting out. Nose with the nostrils. I'm going to draw one where the top is the top of the building block is very thick, and it tapers in. We add the tip of the nose and the nostrils, and add one in the opposite way, where the top of the building block is very thin and it chunks out like that. We have the tip of the nose. I'm adding the tip of the nose as an extra circle, like this, just to kind of help us to remember to jut that out a little bit more. They're kind of shaping in like that, so I'll do that. And then finally, I'll draw a female one because I think it would be very important to include one, because we can use the same sort of technique, but it's just going to be much more subtle. So same sort of thing, building block, but it's going to be much more slender, much less ridges. But I'll draw it and I'll explain it when we get to it. So starting off over here, I'm just going to really breeze through these and explain to you how I mean it. So we have our ridge of the nose right here. And we really, like I've done so many times before, wrapping skin around the shapes or the construction lines that we've set. Okay, so we can see how adding shape changes to that building block drastically changes the personality of the nose. And it's funny to me that noses have power to change almost the personality or style of a character, but they really do. They're really memorable in a weird way. They are a bit tricky, and they take a good practice of using space and shape. So it takes a lot of time to get used to drawing noses. Now these aren't realistic in terms of being very realistic. They're just real-ish. They're more of a comic style, but just a little more structure to how one might approach drawing them. Over here, we have our out sort of shape. Like this. Okay, now I'm drawing female nose. I rarely even use construction lines because it's so simple. We really just, I don't even draw a full line most of the time. Even see, that's the problem, is even using construction lines for a female nose makes it too rigid. So how I would draw a female nose, to be honest, would be like this. I imagine it as a little bit more of its own building block. Instead of drawing nostrils separately or anything like that, that would be how I would draw the building block for a female nose. So drawing the line on top of that, it would be like, there's the top of the nose and the nostrils under there, and that's how I draw a female nose, and that goes into the eyebrow. So a female nose, as you can see, is much more petite and subtle than some of these honkers. And again, using just the basic shapes or comic style of the nose, you get a very normal style nose. But for the sake of example and character, this is the example that I have given you. I hope you have learned a bit from this lesson. I hope you subscribe if you're not subscribed, and make sure to leave a comment if you have any suggestions or things that you want me to teach in the future. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Links are below to download the original files for reference. Remember, if you animate or draw something cool, be sure to share it on Newgrounds.com, the internet's best source for animations, games, art and music. Until next time, see you later.